What is going on, Cause and the Effect community? I am here with the man, the myth, the legend, Todd Sylvester. How you doing, brother? What's going on?
Doing great, Scott. How are you?
I am good. I've been listening to Todd's podcast for the last couple of months. It's called Todd Inspires, Beliefcast. He's a speaker, author, motivational guy. How did you get into this space, Todd? Like, how was this transition for you? And I want to know, because there's usually a story that's pretty deep up behind it.
Yeah, no, thank you. And it is quite the long story. I don't know how much detail right here at the beginning, but I was a drug addict for almost 10 years, and I've been clean now and sober for 32 years.
Wow.
So I've been doing this a long time. And, when I got clean, I had this, and a lot of people who go through this always feel like, man, I want to give back and I want to make a difference. And I guess you can call that my new addiction. I've been wanting to help people ever since. And so for the last 32 years, I've been, motivational speaking. I've been doing coaching. I started my Beliefcast about 5 years ago. And this is just what I do all day. I see probably anywhere from 30 to 40 clients a week. And I've been doing that consistently for the last 32 years.
Wow. And for you, I know you're a big mindset guy. Like, what was the big shift? Because I'm assuming when you were doing your drugs, because I have the obsessive gene in me, and me and Todd were talking a little bit. Everybody knows on the podcast of this story of my life, but like that obsessive gene always pops up in something. I just have the tendency to I can get addicted. I was getting addicted to the goddamn vapor inhalers during COVID, right? It's like, how do you handle this obsessive quality? Is it about understanding like it's here and dealing with it? Is it about simply turning it off? Like, how did you handle that kind of quality?
No, it's a great question, Scott. I call it like, more of it's the all or nothing. And that's kind of how I've been. And really, I wish I could say I turn it off. I've been getting better at controlling it, if that makes sense. And I just shift that energy into something more positive. And so when I was doing when I got caught up in drugs and alcohol, I was all in. I didn't care. I'm like, watch out. And it wasn't until I lost a basketball scholarship is when I realized, wow, this is destroying me. And eventually I got to the point where I was going to end my life. And so now that it's been this long, it's funny, like the other day I was working out in the gym with my wife. We're on the treadmill and I'm just literally killing myself. I am like, and my wife's next to me doing her workout and she's looking at me. She's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Working out." She goes, "No, you're not. You're being an idiot." And because I was literally trying, because my mind goes, okay, we're here at the gym. I might as well just kill myself here and let's go. And my wife's been really good for me. She's always like, "Hey, take a few steps back. Just, you don't need to go kill yourself on the treadmill so you can't walk the rest of the day." And so I've learned, and I'm still learning, to control it and to, push that energy into something more positive. And that's why I think I've been so successful at all these other things and helping other people. Again, not that I have the answer to everyone's problems, but I really do have a passion for making a difference in people's lives.
No, man. And that's beautiful. And I think that duality of like the yin and yang of this thing that is so, because that's what makes you, that's what makes you successful in what you do. And same thing for me, like that turning it on is no problem. But if you're dabbling in the dangerousness of, like, for me, I do the same thing like you. I'm up 4 a.m. We meditate for an hour and a half. We hit the gym for 2 hours. We're hitting that. But I've been trying to like incorporate, I could drink once a month, or I could do this, and we go all in every time. And I'm trying to still figure out this balance, because I always looked at it like that. That's the way you should live your life, all or nothing. Play hard, work hard. And now I'm trying to like really understand there's the doing, there's that working hard and busting your butt, but then there's that simply being. And I think being, like you said, mindful, being aware and being like present for everything kind of helps you understand, oh, I'm going off, I'm turning it on, I'm going 100%, maybe for not the right things here. Is that something that you've dealt with too?
For sure. And I actually have a really powerful story. If we got time, I want to share with you.
Please.
Yeah. So one of my clients flew in from Florida. I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah. And he's an ex-Navy SEAL. Okay. And I won't say his name just to kind of keep his identity confidential. But so he looked like what an ex-Navy SEAL would look like. He was, muscles, tough jaw. He was an alpha male. He had, ego the size of this world. This guy was, and that's why he was such an amazing Navy SEAL. But then he retires from being a Navy SEAL, but he can't shut his mind off, right? And he's just like, and that turned into a really intense addiction to alcohol. He was an alcoholic, and so that's why he came to see me, right? Well, my very first session with him, I walk into my office. He's sitting on the edge of my couch, and he's just like, he's sitting on the edge, and I don't know if you can see this on here, but he literally looked like he wanted to tackle me. And I don't even get a word in. I don't even get to say hi. And he points at my bookshelf and he goes, Todd, I want to read every book you have. I want to do every assignment you have. And he goes, I'm going to be the best client you've ever had. And I believed him. I was like, dang, I love that passion. I love that energy. And then he said the sentence that he regretted the entire time I worked with him. He said, I'm willing to do anything. And I go, okay, so you're willing to do anything, right? And outside my window here, on our property, we have this little pond, right? So I said, okay, you're willing to do anything? He goes, anything, Todd. I said, okay, I don't want you to read one book the entire time here. I don't want you to do one assignment. I said, and then I pointed out my window. I go, do you see that little bench out there by the pond? He goes, yeah. And I go, I want you to sit on that bench for 30 minutes a day. And he goes, are you fucking kidding me?
Yep.
He goes, I flew all the way from here from Florida. I'm paying you all this money and you want me to sit by a pond? And then I go, didn't you just say you're willing to do anything? And he literally stands up, tells me to F off, leaves my office. And I thought, man, maybe he's going to bounce. Maybe he's leaving. I don't know. Well, the next day I'm meeting with another client. And as I'm meeting with this other client, I just happened to glance out the window, and sure enough, he's sitting on that bench by the pond. And I start laughing, right? I'm like, he's out there cursing my name. I would see him in the hallway by my office. He's like, Todd, you're wasting my time. I go, you said you're willing to do anything. Well, it was about our third or fourth session. He comes and sits down, and now he's sitting back in his chair. He's relaxed, and he just smiles and shakes his head. And I go, what's up? And he goes, I'm finally understanding why you're having me sit by that pond. I go, what are you learning? And he goes, I'm learning to just listen to the pond. That was 6 years ago, Scott. This guy will tell you, this ex-Navy SEAL, that little pond here on my property where I'm at saved his life. And I told him, I go, the pond didn't save your life. The silence did. There's a beautiful quote by Ganilian Norris that says, within each of us, there is a silence as vast as the universe. And when we experience that silence, we remember who we are. See, in that silence, his higher power, whatever you want to call it, spoke to him and basically told him, you're okay. You're fine. You don't need to read 10 more books, do 15 more assignments, and then you'll be okay. What he had to realize, Scott, is he had to learn to shut off all those thoughts that were going 1,000 miles an hour and just sit and be one with the pond. And I'm telling you, he hasn't had a drink in 6 years. He still sits by a pond out in Florida. And he goes, Todd, it changed my life forever. And he goes, thank you for, showing me something that no one else would ever tell me. And so going back to your point, I think for guys like you and me, Scott, are all or nothing. We have to take time to just sit and be. Yeah, I believe in playing hard, working hard, all that stuff, but we also need to rest hard. We need to be in the silence a lot of the time. And so it was one of the most remarkable turnarounds I've seen in a client. Clean and sober for over 6 years now. And he still says that pond saved my life.
Man, that's a great story. That's what we've been talking about a lot on this podcast is the stillness and awareness. Yeah. And I would say I started this journey on that classic Tony Robbins masculine energy kick. Let's go, go. And that works. And that's great for doing. But this being piece, and I've been reading a lot of Eckhart Tolle, and I'm sure you're familiar. And that.
Oh yeah. Power of Now. It's an amazing book. Absolutely
beautiful. That just understanding that sitting in that moment, whatever you call it, the Taoism, they call it the void, they call it, just that satori, that being that in that moment. And for me, people have been getting more surprised. I'm learning to speak up more and saying, I do need a little bit more introspection. I do need to kind of be alone a little bit. Is this something that your clients deal with? And how is it having this conversation with people who I guess are just that are this type of way? Because for me, I enjoy my 15-minute mindfulness walk every morning. I enjoy sitting at night looking at the stars. There's something that, like how you said with the pond, but I feel almost a oneness with life in general and with this eternal cosmic force that just it like revamps my energy in a way.
Absolutely. The number one cause of human suffering is our own thinking. And, when I deal with my clients who are dealing with, they're heroin addicts, coke addicts, meth addicts, opiate addicts, you name it, I'm dealing with all of that. Without fail, every single one of them will tell me, I can't stop my mind. I can't stop my thinking. And so what's happening is this superb instrument that we have, which is actually a superpower, it's actually using them instead of them using it. And so that's where all the suffering starts, is with our own thinking. And so being in that moment, like you said, that, you go on that meditation walk or whatever, it's doing those little things and shutting off the world for a little bit and becoming one with whatever we're doing. And so, yeah, my clients really struggle with that. I've struggled with that in my past. I'm pretty good at it now because I've been practicing for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But I still find myself, I have to really take some time and make sure I become one with whatever I'm doing. And I call it my morning meds. It's like, it's my way to kind of just recharge the battery and, kind of move forward in that. So yeah, very important with my clients in overcoming addiction, for sure.
That's so interesting. Now, I'm sure like myself, it seems like people who have that switch, you want a little bit more than most people. I want to do something that's maybe not on that's not on the normal path. I want to have like for me, the human needs, I want connection, I want love, I want growth, I want all of it. How has that balance been for you? And how do you find this? Because you're being a successful podcaster, and then you have your family. You mentioned you have the house. You got to take care of when somebody kind of is going around the bend in your place. How do you set up your life? Is it about a lot of scheduling? Like what does that look like for you?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm very busy, and I used to think being busy, and I still wrestle with this, is really cool. And I'd rather be busy than not. Don't get me wrong. But I think sometimes we think busy is like this positive thing, when in reality, it could be really detrimental. So that's why, yes, I got to be really careful on how I schedule things. And so something my mentor taught me 32 years ago, and I do it to this very day, I call it my hour of power. And it's something that I do every single morning. And again, it's part of my morning meds, as I would call it. And what it is I spend 1 hour working on my heart and my mind and becoming one with whatever. And I can go through all of what I do. We can maybe even do that in the show notes. But that is the single greatest gift, Scott, that I've ever given myself. I am so grateful that my mentor taught me this. And what that has done, and you probably have heard this statement before, if you win the first hour of the day, you win the day. If you lose the first hour of the day, you spend the rest of the day looking for it. And so this is such a critical part of my life in keeping balanced, is that I actually get up early enough to do this hour of power. I also work out like you do. I try to be consistent with all of that. But that hour of power truly is the single greatest gift, because of this hour of power, I have less anxiety, less depression. I'm more connected with my family. I have revelation and inspiration on how I can help my family and or my clients. I have more confidence and courage.
Yep.
And I mean, the list of positives that come from this, I can't even describe. I mean, I get excited. Like, it feels like Christmas Eve today, because tomorrow morning I get to get up and do it again, because I'm telling you, it makes me a better father. It makes me a better husband. It makes me a better friend. It makes me a better podcaster. It makes me a better life coach. I mean, you name it. And I would not give that up for anything. And so it's another thing that I teach my clients, to start incorporating something similar to this. And I'll tell you, that is probably the single greatest key into my success and keeping balanced.
Yes. And everybody listening, please, I've preached this so much. I'm in a similar boat. That the only way I describe it to people is like, imagine being like the shitty quarterback. If I don't wake up in the morning, I'm the shitty quarterback that can't see everything. When I wake up and have that hour to myself, you're putting yourself still in kind of that quasi sleep mode of like, you're still in your theta brainwaves. You're not being so reactive, and you're able to, I feel like I'm Tom Brady every day. You just see everything
Absolutely.
from a different moment. And I've had my little cousins. That's what I get worried about with these kids, Todd. They go right to their phone, and you're getting right back in the process, emotion, thoughts, and getting stuck into it. And I've been making my little cousins, I said, every day you don't start with your phone, I bet you have a good day. And the science, all that stuff is there. Don't worry about that. Just do what works. And it really is a beautiful thing. And I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that's what changed it for me. I'm in the same boat. I can't wait for tomorrow, 4 a.m. It's like, I can't wait.
Yeah, I love it, man. It's we're speaking the same language here. But I'm telling you, anyone listen to this, it's like, it is, I'll tell you, it was also the hardest thing to do, to start incorporating in my mornings. I used to tell myself I'm a night owl. I hated mornings. So I actually not only had to do that, I had to shift my belief system that I actually am a morning person. And it took me a while to make that transition. And I'll tell you, that was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I'm not kidding you. And so shifting that and sacrificing some sleep in order to be able to do this took me a minute to get there. So I just want to make that clear, that it's not an easy thing to do all the time. You know?
Yes, no, absolutely. And we don't have to get too deep into the morning meds, but I am very curious, because I do something called a 6-phase meditation, which is basically being grateful, forgiving somebody, feeling connected. Then I go into my breath work. Then I go into my meditation. What is on a brief synopsis, what does that look like for you?
Well, so I set my intent. Like that. I have an intent for the day, and I actually speak it out loud. I say it out loud, like even to this morning, I knew I was going to be on your podcast, Scott. So I said, part of my intent today was, when I speak with Scott today and his listeners, they're going to feel my love and energy and power. I just said it just like that. That was my intent for the day. And my mind has been focused on that, even though that was earlier this morning. And here we are later in the afternoon talking. And so I set my intent, and then I've created something called my personal declaration statement. And it's kind of like how a business has a mission statement. This is my mission statement for my life, but I call it a declaration statement, because when you declare something, you're acknowledging you possess it already. And so I read this declaration statement, and then I spend 10 minutes visualizing and imagining myself accomplishing everything in that declaration statement. So that's really takes my first 15 minutes of my hour. And then I spend 30 minutes reading this book. I'll show you right here. It's called Mind is the Master, the Complete James Allen Treasury. Look how thick that is. It took me 6 years to read this one time. 6 years. And I'll spend 30 minutes reading this thing. It is gold. James Allen is famous for the book As a Man Thinketh.
Yes.
This is all of his books in this book. And so I'll spend 30 minutes reading from this, taking notes, studying it. And then when that's done, I'll spend 10 minutes in the silence, like we talked about. I just literally turn everything off, and I just sit and listen for 10 minutes. And I'll tell you, that's when inspiration, and that's when my higher power, the universe, speaks to my soul and says, Todd, you're okay. Everything's fine. And then my last 5 minutes of my hour of power, which finishes up the hour, I write a note of appreciation to someone, and I put it in the mail. And one of the most powerful principles on this planet is, if you want to be, give it away. I want to be appreciative. I want to be loving. I want to be understanding. And so what do? I give it away in a letter. And when you give it away, you get it back. You give to get. So that's how I wrap it up. So that's in a quick nutshell of what I do.
That is a beautiful, I'm going to steal the James Allen part, if that's okay with you, Todd. If I can just,
please.
I never thought about it because I do like an hour and a half of reading every day, but like, it just sounds that's a nice place to put it. And would it be okay? Cause I pulled it up, James Allen, the classics collection. Would that be close to it? It's all his books together, right? Yeah.
It's called Mind is the Master, the Complete James Allen Treasury. If you look that up, it should pull up. And anyone listening, guys, I'm telling you, anyone listening to this, I don't know how this guy knew this stuff back in the early 1900s, but I'm telling you, every self-help book that's ever been written, in my opinion, stems from this book. So I want to study the source. So I go to the source.
I love that, dude. That is such a cool. Yeah, I have it up. I'm buying that. I'm taking you up on that. I'm sure that's gonna change the game. And like, so I know we're seeing 3 decades of a kind of a finished product of you, who's blown my mind a little bit here. But like going through this process, I know it's hard to go through. Maybe, I'm sure you went through some childhood stuff. We all have kind of our stories here. When you were going through those kind of trauma-filled wounds, let's say, how was that for you? And what did the process look like? Is it a lot of digging, going backwards and saying, this is where this came from? Or is it more, let it be and let's work on the now? And how did that look for you before you kind of figured this all out?
Well, probably a little of all of it, what you said. I mean, not a little of it, a lot of all of it. When I was growing up, and like most of us growing up, we get to this point where I had this negative voice in my head that was telling me I was no good, that no girl will ever want to be with me, that I'm a loser, I'm stupid. And I walked around believing ultimately, Scott, that I just wasn't good enough. And I think everyone listening to this right now can agree they probably have struggled with that in their life, and they might still be struggling with that. And to me, I didn't, drugs and alcohol were a way for me to kind of mask or suppress that belief, because it hurt to believe that. Walking down the hallway thinking when someone's laughing, they're laughing at me, because I was this really skinny kid and I just thought I looked funny, and I thought, man, those people are laughing at me. And it was just a really depressing time for me. And when looking back on it now, I was really just poisoning myself with irrational and negative beliefs about me. And again, we all go through it on some level, some worse than others. Some people's parents divorced, or they were bullied, or, they saw something tragic, or they were abused. I mean, these start creating this new narrative. And so one of the things I've learned in my 32 years, Scott, is that the most powerful force in the human psyche is the story we tell ourselves about ourselves. It is by far the single greatest force. And so when I was growing up, not when I was a young kid, because as a young kid, I was in joy all day long. But as I got older, I started comparing myself. I started feeling I didn't fit in. So my narrative or my story changed. And I started walking around telling myself, I'm just not good enough. And it wasn't until I started going back, when did that start, and working on changing that belief, that also gave me the fuel and the desire and the passion and the strength to overcome my alcoholism and my drug addiction.
So you really went back to the source, and it sounds like it was more like it was a Todd imposed thing. You did this, you had this voice kind of creative from just yourself, just your psyche.
Yeah, that part of it. I mean, and I also went through some, I had some things happen to me by a neighbor kid that, some abuse that played into it. My parents were very loving, but my mom struggled with drug addiction. She was addicted to opiates at one point, and my dad, they drank a lot and things like that. They partied, but I knew they loved me, but I kind of grew up in that environment as well. And so we never talked about, I never went to my parents when I was really struggling. I just kind of kept it in and shoved it down and didn't tell anybody. And so when I discovered drugs and alcohol for myself at age 11, I kind of just ran with it at that point.
So you were going hard in the paint at a pretty young age.
Well, let me rephrase that. 11 is when I had my first drink of alcohol. I didn't get drunk. It was about a year and a half later when I discovered marijuana, and that's when that opened the whole floodgates. I fell in love with it, and I started smoking every single day, drinking every single weekend, and then that just, as you well know, anyone listening to this, that just grew into an addiction, and I started doing everything under the sun that I could get my hands on.
Yep. No. I was just talking to Todd earlier about like my childhood and that stuff, and not having a dad there. I think you try to kind of you try to like overcome it by being this kind of bigger personality. I'm still like kind of still sort of big personality, but like you're trying to understand like why wasn't I good enough? Why do I still feel this way? And I, like how you were saying, in my 20s, I feel like I was trying to find the validation in the external world. So I worked in a hedge fund for 6 years. I got my CPA, my CF, all this good stuff, right? And you keep trying to fill this cup. And it's like everything else. It's like gambling. It's like drinking. There will never be enough. And having that realization for me, like understanding, like you're trying to fill a void that you have to kind of look inside and you have to look internal. And like you have to be the one to make yourself whole. It is really the answer to that, right?
Yeah. I think we, there's a beautiful quote by Rumi. I actually posted it today. Rumi, 13th century Persian poet. Yes. He said, "You suppose you are the trouble, but you are the cure." And so I really believe that. It doesn't mean we don't need help. We all need help. But at the end of the day, it comes down to me. What am I going to do to help myself? What's interesting is when we start helping ourselves, people come out of the woodwork wanting to help support us. It's interesting. It's when we play the victim and we get stuck in that mindset, people don't want to, and then we feel like no one wants to be around us. And that's usually what happens. And so, and I've been there too. I've played the victim and I played stuck, but I'll tell you, when I started working on myself and doing my part, people started coming out of the woodwork wanting to help me. And so it's a collaboration of all of it.
No, it is. It's so funny because I think for me, even, I figured this out a couple of years ago. Like I was always looking for love. And I said, and going through this work, you go, wow, what if you just gave the love? And all of a sudden the same situation you're talking about. It's like, people, leave me alone. I'm just trying to give. I only got so much. And it's just like a beautiful thing. Yeah. To have these little changes. But now let's get to Todd in the couple of years right after, getting through this addiction.
Sure.
What made you say this is the passion you want to do, and how did you turn this into a reality? Because this is something a lot of people, I get emails about, like, I'm working a 9-to-5 job, I know it's not my passion. How did you go through the process of like wanting, like, I just, for my own personal thing, because I'm trying not to work in the day either, Todd. Trying to have my own thing.
Yeah, no, great question. And I'm excited to answer this question for everyone listening, because I get this question all the time. Todd, I don't know what my purpose is. Yes. How do I even find it? What do I do? Right. So let me share a story and then I'll tie this all in. So in my story, when I started trying to get myself clean, I had a really amazing experience happened to me, but I was still struggling. I was a bartender at the time and I'm trying to quit drinking, but I'm a bartender, which is not a good idea. And I was working with my mentor. I'm about 8.5 months into working with this mentor. But I was still using and drinking every single day as I was meeting with this guy, right? Well, it takes, at about this 8.5 month mark, I finally made it 3 days clean in that week. But I'm still struggling. But this voice in my head's going, "You're pathetic, Todd. Who practices basketball 2 or 3 hours every day to just lose your scholarship because you'd rather get high? You are the biggest loser." I mean, you name it. This voice was vicious, right? And I'm still struggling with it. Well, as a bartender, I would get tips from the waiters and waitresses because I'd make drinks for their customers. And then anyone that would sit at the bar, I'd get their tips. And I'd get a lot of change back. This was like 30 years ago, right? And I would keep the change in the cup holders of my car. And I had quarters, nickels, and dimes. And it was about this 8.5 month mark when I made it 3 days clean, but I'm still struggling. I'm driving out of my neighborhood. It's a beautiful sunny day, warm day. And as I'm driving out of my neighborhood, out of the corner of my eye, I see this little girl selling lemonade. No big deal. I drive right on past. And then I had this impression come over me that said, turn around and give all that girl all the money in your car. Now, in the couple, I had about $40 worth of quarters, nickels, and dimes in my car. And 32 years ago, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, hell yeah.
So I thought, wow, that'll be amazing. So I flipped my car around. I pull up. There's this cute little 4th grade girl sitting there. I said, "Hey, how much for a glass?" She said, 25 cents. I said, "I'll take one." So she pours it, hands it to me, I set it on my dash. And I tell this little girl, "Hey, cup your hands like this." So she does. She's just sitting there smiling. And I just start scooping all this change into her hands. And she's like freaking out. She's like, "No way, no way." I'm like, "Hold on, I got more." And I keep scooping more. It takes me like 10 scoops. And I finally get this last scoop in her hands. And she throws it on her table and takes off into her house. And I'm thinking, she's going to go tell her parents some dude just gave her $1 million, right? As I pull away, Scott, I cry like I've never cried before in my entire life. For those listening, have you ever cried so hard you feel like you're cleansing your soul? This was one of those soul cleansing cries. And I literally have to pull my car over, Scott. I put my face in my hands and I just sobbed because for the first time in my life, I felt like I did something for somebody else. Because as a drug addict, I'm the most selfish person on the planet. I'm going to lie to you, cheat you, manipulate you to get what I want. And the first time I actually made this girl's probably decade, right? And in that moment, Scott, I loved who I was. In that moment, I wanted to be clean. In that moment, I was on fire. You could probably see the quote on the back of my wall. It's my favorite quote. "The most powerful weapon on earth is the human soul on fire." Dude, I was on fire. And that all or nothing mentality kicks in. And I thought, if that little girl's there next Saturday, I'm giving her all my money, ironically earning as a bartender. So next Saturday, I drive by. Sure enough, there she is. I pull up. She recognizes me. She's like, "No way." And I give her $30 in quarters, nickels, and dimes. I do this the next Saturday, $40. The next Saturday, $30. The next Saturday, $25. I do this every Saturday for the next 2.5 months. And every time I pull away, Scott, I start to cry like I've never cried before. It's the greatest feeling. There was no drug on the planet that ever gave me the feeling I was feeling. And it was then when all this happened that I realized my purpose. I realized I want to make a difference in people's lives. I want to help people believe in themselves. I want to help them realize they're okay. I want them to stay away from drugs and alcohol. I want them to go live their lives with passion and with drive, right? That's so that's when things changed. That's when I knew I'm going to dedicate my life to helping other people, and I'm never going to touch drugs and alcohol ever again. That was 32 years ago. I've been 32 years clean and sober. And so the message here for your listeners, if you don't know what your passion is or your purpose, go do something for someone else, and you're going to discover your purpose by doing that. Again, you got to give to get. I gave all my money away at the lemonade stand, and I got my life in return. I had no idea that was going to happen.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm telling you. And so since then, dude, I've done over, let me show you this real quick. So
please.
My nickname in high school was Sly Dog. My last name's Sylvester. I actually had a dog named Sly, right? And so after I had that experience at the lemonade stand, now I'm jumping ahead a little bit. I still worked with my mentor for a full year and a half. You know, he became my rehab basically. Anyway, I was in my room one day thinking, how can I help kids? Because I knew that's what I wanted to do, but I didn't know exactly how. And this is another key point. You have to do like brain dumps. Let the universe, your subconscious, let it flow through you and write it down on paper. I started drawing a stick figure dog, right? And I thought, there it is. I'm going to create this cartoon character called Sly Dog. His motto is going to be drug free. That's me. And I'm going to go around to all the schools in the state of Utah, and I'm going to teach these kids to believe in themselves, that they're okay, to help other people, and to stay away from drugs and alcohol, dude. And so I went to a graphic designer, and this is what he designed. Hopefully you can see it on your page there. There's Sly Dog right there.
There he is. See it perfectly.
There he is. And I went around, I spoke to, over the next 5 years, Scott, I spoke to over 300,000 kids. And what was interesting is parents would come up to me and go, Todd, my kid loves your program. Would you work with him one-on-one? I'm like, yeah, sure. I didn't even know what I'm doing. I'm like, yeah, I knew I wanted to help, but I don't know what I was going to do. But like, yeah, I'll meet with him. That's how my mentoring and life coaching and mindset coaching started.
Wow.
And that's why I'm sitting here with you today. I do this. This is my full-time job. It's been full-time for well over 12 years. This is what I do. And it all started because I wanted to help kids after the lemonade stand.
And you were not even worrying about, listen, how am I going to make money? You said, nope. This is the passion. This is what fires me up. This will pull me forward. And
absolutely.
Dude, you fucking did it.
I did it, dude. And I'll tell you, it's amazing that I really believe when we want to give back and help. See, I'll say this all the time to my clients. If you master the first 11 steps of AA, you'll drink again. You master step 12, you'll never touch another drop. What's step 12? Go help someone else. You master that one, game over. Because there's no high on the planet that can give you the feeling when you make someone's day. Or you know how cool it is when a kid comes up to you that's in 5th grade and says, Todd, because what you told me, I'm never touching drugs and alcohol. Are you kidding me? I mean, I do cartwheels and somersaults. It's unbelievable. And so that's why I love what I'm doing, because I want to give back, because I know what it's like to feel hopeless and dark and sad. And so many people, unfortunately, feel that way. But I'll tell you, when you can help them walk the walk and get out of it and realize that they actually have the power to do it, there's no drug on the planet that can give you that.
Man, you got me all jacked up here. I want to go run 6 miles with you, Todd.
Yeah.
So you literally, like you mentioned before, like you are your cure. You said, I'm not only going to be my own cure, I'm going to be this cure for everybody that I even preemptively helping kids. Like, dude, that's just a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Yeah. And really what I'm telling them is that they are the cure for them. but I walk the walk with them, but then I'll say, but you got to walk it with me, but I'll walk it with you, but I'll show you the way, but I don't fix anybody. You'll fix you. And as you start working on you, I tell this to all my clients, it's interesting because everybody wants help and we need help. Yeah. I want help and I need it. But the moment I started working on me and actually taking care of me, people came out of the woodwork. It was like, where are these people coming from? And they wanted to be a part of it. They wanted to help. They want to make a difference. It's amazing.
Dude, that's so freaking beautiful, man. Now, this book, It's Time to Start Living. Is this kind of stuff that you're talking about? I know it's about understanding how the belief systems fuel addictive behavior, but did you develop this as you were kind of going through your 30 years, I'm assuming?
Yeah. I mean, it's my own personal experience and then learning from meeting with over 17,000 clients in the last 32 years. And It's Time to Start Living is more like an ebook. It's like 34 pages, I think, long. It's bigger. But it's kind of does an overview of my story and the principles I teach. And then I wrote, I Am Recovered. It's on Amazon. It's a #1 bestseller. And that's more of my full story. It talks about the lemonade stand. It even has an excerpt from Lindy, who is the lemonade girl. We've stayed in contact since then.
Wow.
And yeah, she actually sends me clients. It's amazing. She is she's my angel, man.
Dude, that's so cool. Now your parents, you said that they battled with, how was that process as you kind of became sober, and did you find a light for them? Because this is something I was telling Todd earlier, my dad, witness protection program, I've seen him. Yeah. I see him sparingly, and he lives in Vegas. And I would say he moved from he tried AA, did all that stuff, moved from all this stuff to being a gambler. And it's like, I feel like I'm the father in the situation. Like, how did they look like going through this process, helping your parents? Did you help your parents? What did that look like? Great question.
So, when I changed, my family, I mean, I think every family has dysfunction. We had dysfunction, obviously. And, me changing, my parents, they were kind of like shocked. Like all of a sudden I'm doing different things and they're looking at me going, what are you doing? I mean, it was good, but yet at the same time, it was almost like they didn't quite believe it. And so my family was in a mess at that time when I first started getting clean. And so I'm telling you, one of the hardest things I had to do is I almost had to separate from my family for a while and my friends. So here I am feeling like I'm standing alone. And that's why purpose is so important, because that's hard. That was actually harder than stopping the drugs and alcohol, is because, my family would have parties and they would be drinking and things like that. And I wouldn't go to the party because, again, I'm just trying to keep myself away from that. And I mean, I love my family to death, but at that time I had to kind of stay away. Thankfully, my mom got clean. My dad's doing great too.
Nice.
My parents ended up divorcing, but what's interesting, they were divorced for 6 years and they came back and remarried. Well, go figure.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah. So now they're back together. And so we have a good relationship. They're doing good. They're in their mid 70s now. And, but they're blown away about like what I'm doing, like my podcast and my speaking events all over the world and meeting with clients and all this stuff. And that I've actually written a book. I didn't even read a book until I was out of high school. I mean, seriously,
same.
Yeah, to think I could even write a book blows my freaking mind, man. So, but yeah, it's been a cool process. And I think them seeing me changing, there was an underlying fuel for them. Like, man, we need to maybe step up too. And we've had great talks over the years. So at first it was really rocky, but now it's pretty solid.
I'm so glad to hear that, man. And I think for kids that talk to me about this, is like COVID for me was a great thing because I got removed from New York City nightlife, put it on the suits, going out, and you're like, okay, this is cool. And now everything's coming back, and Scott, come out. And it's like, I'm about, and the same thing that you're talking about, people seeing you differently. It's like, why are you reading why are you reading Denial of Death? Why are you reading Pulitzer Prize winners? It's like, what the hell's going on? Would you lose your freaking mind? And it's like, no, I'm just going down like a different path here.
Yeah.
Like, is this something that you see in your clients, and how do you help them more on the younger side? Because you got social media, you got, they call me Great Scott on social media, Todd. I can't be having this. I can't. The guys want to go out tonight. I can't have it. How do you get them through that? Is it more just like you're saying, like you have to keep people at a distance and tell them I'm making a change.
Yeah. I think social media, obviously, I know we all talk about it now. It really is an issue. It's a problem for most kids. The average kid in the United States spends 9 hours a day on social media. 9 hours. That's a full-time job with overtime.
OT. Yeah.
With OT. And then you wonder, and then these kids wonder why they feel depressed, they feel anxious, they feel like they don't belong. They create these belief systems that I'm not good enough. And so getting a kid to separate from social media is probably one of the biggest challenges I have in what I do. But there's ways to do that, and getting these kids to be willing to do those things. And so, it comes down to, I say this a lot, and Johann Hari, he's the one that famously said this, that connection's the opposite of addiction. And what happens is when these kids, they feel like they're connected on social media, but it's synthetic. It's not real per se, right? So I'm always trying to hey, let's connect authentically. And, that hour of power that I do in the morning, I'm connecting with my higher power. I feel a connection, right? And whoever's listening, whatever your higher power may be, if it's God, if it's the universe, if it's energy, connect with it on a daily basis. I mean, I get a lot of people saying, Todd, I'm not religious, but I'm very spiritual. And I'm like, hey, that's awesome. I support you. Then I'll say, how much time do you spend on your spirituality? And they go, probably none. And I go, okay. So there's a disconnect here. So I love it. If you want to be the spiritual person, beautiful. I love it. I support you, but let's do some things that you can connect spiritually. What does that look like? And it's typically not on our phones, right? It's more about, like you and I right now are connecting, man. This is great conversation. I mean, we're talking, we're seeing each other face to face here via Zoom, but we're connecting. And I think these kids need to do more of that. And so that's we could do a whole podcast just on that.
Yeah, man. No, it's such a scary thing. Cause I was telling my little cousin, like, yo guys, you got to go make the reservations. You got to call up to make the reservations. Can't do it. It's like, we got some problems. Cause I don't think we're going to see the real detriments. Obviously it's great when you find guys like you in my podcast, you connect all this stuff, using it for good, but you don't know with a kid who's looking at this phone from 8 to what they're going to look at 28, 38, the attention span, all of a sudden 80% up in ADHD. Get them away from the freaking phones. That's the issue.
Yeah. Yep. There's and I think it starts with us individually. So those listening, if I want my kids to be off social media and have boundaries around it, then I better damn well be doing it myself. Right? Practice what I preach. So when they see dad's doesn't have social media on his phone, he just looks at it on his computer once in the morning and kind of answers whatever he needs to do, and then he moves on about his day. But then when I can look at my kids in the eye and say, hey, here, let's put some really strong, healthy boundaries around your social viewing. And then as you do that, you're going to feel so much better. But if they see me doing that, they're going to go, okay, Dad, I'll listen to you because I see you doing it. So that's another thing that we can do. But I'll tell you, but the cool thing is it's possible. It's not impossible.
Yeah. I hope eventually there is some sort of regulation put on it, whether it's maybe turning off social media for a couple hours a day, something that just, because right now kids are running loose, and I get nervous with how much it's become this. He said this, she said this, because now every girl will look at that girl, every guy will look at the dude with the car and say, wow, I want that. And it's really kind of like it's just fake. Honestly, it's just not real.
And here's another way to prove what we're talking about for your listeners. So here I'm at Wasatch Recovery. I'm a counselor here. I've been here 8 years. When clients check into this place, they have to turn their phone in. They don't get to look at their phone for 45 to 60 days. Now, the first week they're here without their phone, they literally are like going, okay, where's my phone? Yeah. Right? I need to look at my phone. And without fail, I had a kid just sitting right behind me earlier today. And he says, Todd, he goes, I can't tell you how good it feels to not have my phone right now. He goes, it's amazing. And what's scary though, Scott, is when they're getting ready to leave and we hand them back their phone, they're almost like, I don't know if I don't want this. Right. I don't want it back, because they know what's going to open up. And so what I do is I teach them the same thing. And again, I'm not saying everyone has to do this, but I always say, take your social media off your phone and just look at it on your computer in the morning and maybe once at night before you go to bed, just to make sure you're connecting or whatever. And then, dude, I'm telling you. So it's an interesting kind of little experiment that I've been watching as people check their phones in and then get them back out.
So that's what you're doing.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow. Is that change? Yeah. It changed the game for you?
Game changer. So when I'm sitting in a waiting room at a restaurant, everyone's on their phone doing this, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm the oddball out. Everyone's looking at me like, "Hey, weirdo, where's your phone?" You know, and I'm like, and I'm just staring at the wall, or I'm talking to my wife, or I'm making conversation. But it really has been a game changer for me.
For me, it's just, I'm realizing that stillness, just being able to sit with yourself, is one of the most powerful. It's so undervalued. And I think the more that it's because I look at all of us in the space world together, and we just got to rise the tide a little bit more. More kids will see your podcast, my podcast, and all of a sudden, okay, get off the freaking phone. Like, listen, this stuff works. And it works. It's how to be. You want to be a cool, successful guy. This is how you do it. You can't be. Because that's what I'm worried about too, is people being functional, right? If a kid's on Instagram 9 hours a day, then you're playing another game, whatever, this or that, your half your day's gone. It's crazy.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Todd, thank you so much for your time, man. This is seriously, it's been an absolute pleasure. This is like we're connected here, brother. That's why I love this stuff, man. Thank you so much. Everybody, check out Todd Inspires, the Beliefcast. You can find everything in the notes below. Todd, anything coming up you want to talk about or anything?
No, I just, appreciate you having me on your show, Scott. It's a pleasure. Your listeners, thank you for tuning in to Scott's podcast. He does an amazing job. I love what he said. We're trying to, bring more light into the world. So social media, if we're using it for good, can be a really powerful tool for good. So that's what we're doing. Check out my website, toddinspires.com. You can see everything that I'm doing. And again, thanks for all your support and having me on the show.
Thank you, brother. Cause and the Effect community, thank you guys so much. Leave a like, review, subscribe. Most importantly, tell one of your friends about this. Particularly you young guys, listen. I see you guys. 70% of you under 24. Just tell one of you. You guys need to get off the phone, man. As always, stay safe, stay positive, stay blessed. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.